With this report, we seek to educate policymakers and the general public about the myriad ways the Chinese Communist Party is actively harming the United States, its allies, its partners, and the wider international community. This report also aims to debunk the myth of the so-called Chinese model. Contrary to popular portrayal in the West, the People's Republic of China, under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, is not a model world citizen. Dominated by General Secretary Xi Jinping, the CCP is expanding its power and influence at the expense of others. We detail here at least 6 ways in which the CCP harms the United States and the world. No one! Predatory economic practices. The PRC violates its World Trade Organization commitments and international norms and standards through massive subsidies to favored companies, intellectual property, theft, forced tech transfer, and corrupt trade and investment practices. For example, CCP-controlled firms often undersell their products and services to gain unfair market access in another country and then undercut local competitors once inside. In Africa, the PRC has built ports it owns outright or has long-term leases on. Now it uses these ports to extract minerals from African countries, granting Chinese companies privileged access while limiting that of local producers. The PRC's massive infrastructure project, the One Belt, One Road initiative, preys on developing countries via unsustainable and corrupt lending. While ignoring global labor and environmental standards, the PRC hurts host economies, undermines rule of law, infringes on sovereignty, unfairly benefits Chinese workers and firms, and applies economic leverage to bully governments on unrelated political and strategic issues. As Australian professor Deborah Brodegum explains, it is essentially an instrument of China's foreign policy with a little bit of diplomacy thrown in to grease the wheel. For example, in 2017, after Sri Lanka defaulted on its loans from China and was unable to repay, Beijing took a 99-year lease on the Hambantota port. Now Chinese ships, including military vessels, are granted access to one of the busiest maritime choke points in the world. No! To military aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. The PRC's military-civil fusion strategy proposes to build the People's Liberation Army into a world-class military. By 2049, through appropriation of advanced civilian technology at home and abroad, and the PLA seeks to project power by establishing military bases worldwide via BRI and military cooperation deals, both to dominate the Indo-Pacific region and challenge the United States globally. Beijing continues to accelerate its secret nuclear weapons buildup. By 2035, the PRC could possess between 110 and 250 warheads, potentially tripling its arsenal within a decade. Such expansion would surpass the number of U.S. nuclear weapons deployed during the Cold War at the peak of mutually assured destruction. From the South China Sea to the Himalaya, Beijing increases the risk of conflict by using its military to bully its neighbors, threaten maritime shipping lanes, and destabilize borders. At the same time, the PRC modernizes and expands its nuclear arsenal without transparency or adequate explanation. Just as troubling is the PLA's increasingly large and technologically sophisticated force of conventional weapons. Meanwhile, China's increasingly assertive behavior in the East and South China Seas has raised tensions with neighboring countries and with the United States, which has resulted in a growing number of close calls at sea. Number 3. Undermining global norms and values. The PRC weakens the global order by ignoring its commitments and manipulating international organizations to advance its own unilateral strategic goals, to include setting up a new international order dominated by the CCP. The PRC routinely introduces language into multilateral documents to advance the party's authoritarian ideology and policy objectives and threatens countries that resist. For example, BRI and other PRC initiatives foster corruption, undercut good development, and create unsustainable debt burdens for recipients. Similarly, the PRC's insistence on non-interference in domestic affairs while advancing its community of shared future for mankind conceals the regime's promotion of mass surveillance, minority repression, and attacks on human rights defenders. While claiming to be a champion of globalization, the PRC restricts imports and foreign investment, manipulates exchange rates, and pressures multinational corporations to transfer technology and intellectual property. The PRC has launched thousands of lawsuits in domestic courts to enforce its Made in China 2025 industrial plan, which targets advanced technologies vital to the United States and other nations, and Chinese officials have threatened to remove any references to Taiwan or Tibet from congratulatory messages sent to foreign leaders. Number 4. Coercive tactics abroad. CCP-controlled media like China Central Television, China News Service, Xinhua News Agency, and the Sitran China Daily spread propaganda globally via websites, social media accounts, and even traditional advertising buys in Western media outlets. Additionally, the CCP's United Front Work Department and affiliated proxies pressure and co-opt foreign officials at all levels of government, the Chinese diaspora, and business interests to voice support for the CCP's false narratives and avoid topics the party considers embarrassing. Such tactics are used around the world and during major international events. For example, in 2019, before the fourth plenum of the National People's Congress, the department orchestrated a campaign targeting scholars who published books criticizing Xi Jinping and his anti-corruption campaign. It also reaches beyond academia to influence journalists and artists. The department even maintains a blacklist of foreign journalists. And while maintaining a significant internet presence, the CCP exerts influence over foreign news media by threatening advertisers with repercussions if they pull out of CCP-linked outlets. The party also exploits perceived anti-China sentiment in foreign countries to target those who oppose its policies. For example, in 2018, the United Front targeted ethnic Chugas living in Turkey, warning them against supporting what Beijing deems separatist movements in Xinjiang. And in 2019, it worked with Saudi authorities to arrest a prominent cleric, an outspoken critic of the PRC's policies towards youth. The CCP also uses inducements such as honorary citizenship and noble titles to cultivate goodwill and secure compliance. Finally, the CCP works through proxies to influence foreign universities and think tanks. Since 2015, more than 1,600 Confucius Institutes and classrooms funded by the CCP have opened in nearly 150 countries. While ostensibly meant to promote language learning, these programs enable the CCP to exert influence over university administrators and academics, and often require teachers to be party members. No. 5. Cyber theft and the CCP aggressively advances its national and commercial interests through cyber means. To achieve this end, it employs a combination of well-resourced state-sponsored actors and private companies controlled or influenced by the state. The PRC steals intellectual property, sensitive data, and trade secrets from both government and private sector targets across the globe. These activities allowed the PRC to advance its own domestic industries and commercial interests and undercut foreign competition. It uses sophisticated hacking operations to infiltrate corporate networks and steal trade secrets and customer lists, engage in large-scale IP, and enabled state-owned enterprises to undercut prices in global markets. In one instance, Chinese hackers stole 20 gigabytes of data from a U.S. company, including the identities of millions of customers. In another case, they stole proprietary technology from a U.S. defense contractor. And in yet another incident, hackers linked to the PLA stole data from at least 12 U.S. companies seeking to develop therapeutics for the COVID-19 pandemic. Chinese theft of American IP and trade secrets in recent years is estimated to cost hundreds of billions of dollars annually. Moreover, the PRC conducts pervasive online censorship and blocking to shape public opinion and discourse. An army of censors monitor online activity, controlling domestic search engines, and blocking access to overseas websites. Commentators and social media users are routinely detained and punished for posting unapproved material. And no. 6. Human rights abuses. The CCP's domestic policies have been marked by severe and systematic human rights abuses. As the late PRC leader Zhao Jiang reportedly said, there should be no criticism of the party. There should be no democracy in the party. There should be no human rights in China. And under Xi Jinping, there has been no improvement. The CCP practices mass arbitrary detention, detaining up to 2 million ethnic Uyghurs and other minorities in internment camps where it subjects them to political indoctrination, torture, and other abuses. In addition to mass arbitrary detentions, the PRC employs severe restrictions on movement, both domestically and across borders, and prohibits Uyghurs from practicing their religion free. The CCP also carries out a range of abusive policies against other religious and ethnic groups, including Christians, Tibetan Buddhists, and members of the Falun Gong spiritual group. Meanwhile, the CCP closely monitors and controls civil society, restricting the ability of citizens to organize and protest peacefully and subjecting activists to detention, torture, and imprisonment. Authorities have also curtailed freedom of speech, the press, and the internet, as well as the right to privacy. Finally, the CCP persecutes those who report on abuses or call attention to the regime's misconduct, labeling them as disorderly or hostile forces. In conclusion, the CCP's predations are not limited to the PRC's borders. It harms the United States, our allies, our partners, and the wider international community. The Chinese Communist Party is no partner. And, contrary to the myth of the Chinese model, the PRC is not a responsible world citizen. In fact, the party seeks to undermine the rules-based international order that has brought decades of peace and prosperity. The United States and its allies must work together to push back against CCP predation and ensure that the 21st century is not defined by the supremacy of the Chinese Communist Party.